Welcome back to Miami. So, with the Miami Grand Prix, a race that took place over the weekend, or actually not even 24 hours ago. It was an interesting one. Obviously, we had a fairly dull first half of the race, but then it came alive once Pierre Gasly and Lando Norris collided. It's hard to say if it was a good one. Obviously, there was all the furore about the whole event surrounding the race, and on the show, we will talk about how the race and the track was overall, the Americanized nature of the whole week, whether we're happy with it or not, whether it's F1 or not. The battles between the Mercedes drivers, obviously, arguably the biggest intra-team battle we saw. Maybe Aston Martin and Haas as well could be up there. The TV direction and commentary, I'm sure all of us have a few words to say on that, not being able to see what was going on in the midfield. And then how do we solve the DRS trains that we saw at the start of the race and probably contributed to it being not a great start to the race. But obviously, I can't do this on my own, so I am here with my old co-host, Jack Rowe. How are you doing?
I don't know why I get introduced first. I'm doing pretty well. It's been the first time, I think it's probably ever since the Raw specials I've not been on for so long. It's been 6 weeks, but I'm slowly weaning myself off it. Don't worry.
It's good to have you back, though. How did you find the race?
Oh, God. I was watching the highlights a minute ago. Just need to remind myself. It's a bit strange having it on the Monday as well. It's like, in some ways, it's so fresh in my mind, but in other ways, I'm only remembering the last 10 laps, and there's a 30-lap gap in the highlights. And I think that probably that says it all, really. The end of the race was okay. No real climax or real selling point right at the end, but it became more interesting. But it was so boring in the middle.
And we'll come on to that. Obviously, we've got Bethany as well. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's only been 2 weeks since my last appearance, so good to be back.
Yeah, no, it is good to have you back as well. And obviously, I've got my co-host, Chinmay. How are you doing, Chinmay?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Yeah, I'm just trying to remember that middle period. It's literally just been erased from my mind.
There's nothing to remember.
There isn't. There genuinely isn't. I mean, I'll run through the finishing positions quickly. We had, obviously, Max Verstappen taking his third win of the season. Third, I think. Third win of the season. Charles Leclerc in second. The position he is in normally, if Verstappen is winning, obviously last time in Imola being the exception. Carlos Sainz coming home in third. Sergio Perez battling a power issue but coming home in fourth. George Russell climbing from 12th to 5th with maybe a bit of luck from the safety car along the way. Lewis Hamilton finishing in 6th. Valtteri Bottas with a very good performance in 7th. Obviously a very good qualifying as well. Esteban Ocon with, you'd have to say, maybe the performance of the day, obviously benefiting from that safety car, but coming from 20th on the grid to finish 8th. Alex Albon in the Williams, again putting in a very good performance to finish 9th. Lance Stroll rounding out the top 10 for Aston Martin. Fernando Alonso in 11th, dropping back from 9th due to 2 5-second penalties. Yuki Tsunoda in 12th after having what was a terrible race, because I kept track of him because he's in my F1 fantasy team and I was thinking he's going to lose me points. But climbing back to 12th, and I think probably a good result compared to how he was looking. Daniel Ricciardo in 13th, Nicholas Latifi in 14th, breaking his duck of when he finishes 16th, this time climbing up 2 places. Mick Schumacher in 15th, having a very good race until he collided with his, master, Sebastian Vettel. Kevin Magnussen also having a good race before he collided with Lance Stroll. A bit of Haas on Aston Martin violence there from both Haas's and both Aston Martins. Then the 4 cars that didn't finish, I think Vettel might have been classified in 17th, but Gasly retiring with steering issues, I think. Obviously Norris colliding with Gasly, and then Guan Yu Zhou retiring with an engine issue. As usual, we will go around the panel and we will give it the race, and I want the full race rating out of 10, starting with you, Jack.
I think had the safety car not come out, it would have been a 4, maybe even a 3, but I'll give it a 6. I think we've been spoiled over recent years, and Yeah, I mean, if we'd seen more of the midfield battle, if we'd actually kind of got involved with it, it might have even been higher. But yeah, 6.
Okay, Chinmay?
5, mainly because we didn't see because of TV direction, I think just brought it down by a point and that middle period. But I just want to mention, Max Verstappen has just won every race he's finished this season.
Right, he's good. What do you want me to say?
But like,
it's annoying.
But he's still like 30 points behind, unfortunately.
I think,
so.
What's it? Jack, I know you wrote it down before we started. How many points is it?
19 points now.
Ooh. Getting a bit closer.
Oh.
So that was a 5, was it?
Yeah, I give it 5.
Out of 10. And Bethany?
Yeah, I'd say they weren't exactly halves, but it was a race of 2 halves, basically. The first bit was very, very processional, basically, and the second part, from basically the Alonso-Gasly collision onwards, was just lots and lots of events, to say the least, that made it more of an exciting race, but probably not for the right reasons. But overall, I'd give it, half of it was boring, half of it was entertaining, so to say, so slap bang in the middle, 5 out of 10.
I think I'd go for a 5 as well. Obviously, we have seen the start of the race very dull. Obviously, the ending was quite good. But we will start with an issue that Jack and Chinmay have mentioned. The TV direction was just terrible. It's just like, Jack, you want to see the front of the field, see how like it's going, because ultimately that is what matters a lot. But when we've got like 5, 6, 7 laps to go, Leclerc's realistically not going to be getting past Verstappen. You want to be seeing that midfield battle, and that midfield battle was intense. I think it was between like Ricciardo, Stroll, Magnussen, Schumacher, Vettel, and we just weren't seeing it.
Yeah, that's true. I think it wasn't just that moment. It was, I remember earlier on, they were talking to Ted as Verstappen makes that overtake for the lead on lap 8 or 9 or whatever lap it was. And just, I think consistently throughout, it was just a little bit of a shambles. I think there were so many interesting battles towards the end with that range of tyres. We saw it with Perez and Sainz, but you actually got to see, and that was great. That was one of the highlights of the race for me. But it would have been nice to see, a little bit more of the Hamilton versus Russell stuff, and all the Hasses and Aston Martins and Alfa Romeos that just got shuffled into. It was a mess during the end, wasn't it? Or at least I assume it was. I didn't see any of it.
I know, but Chinmay, it wasn't even really in the lower midfield, because you maybe could make the argument that 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th matters a bit less. But it was even the Mercedes. Like, they were battling for 5th and 6th into the final laps. We'll come on to that a bit later as well. But we still weren't seeing it. We were just watching, like, the timing tower. Just Russell and Hamilton, like, jumping back and forth. It was just not very good direction.
It's like they somehow got the Monaco TV directors over to Miami. Because, it's just... I just don't like how... This is not the first time we've had poor TV direction. I feel this is just something that everyone needs to work on. Yeah,
and I mean, Bethany, what do you think there was a reason it was a bit poor? Because obviously even the crowd shots, which have been the bane of the F1 viewing fan. I remember back in, I want to say, Silverstone 2019, when Hamilton went round the outside of Bottas at Brooklands, and then Bottas came back at him into Cops Corner. We cut to a shot of the crowd. Just what needs to be done to improve it? What do you think?
I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. I feel like that at the end of the race they were mainly just wishing, in a way, just wishful thinking that Leclerc would be able to keep up with Verstappen and be able to challenge the lead like he did straight after the safety car, but then he dropped back. Either that, or they just forgot the controls to the changing the cameras. I don't know, but yeah.
I mean, it sort of comes down to...
Sorry.
No.
I just don't know because it seems to be... It doesn't matter who's doing it. It seems to be a consistent issue, so I'm not sure what they can actually do.
I mean, Chinmay, it sort of comes down to what we want to see in a race. Like, do we want to see just the leaders parading around for, like, 10 odd so laps. Obviously, we had it sort of the same in Imola last year. We had 15 laps of Lewis Hamilton, like, coming up to the back of Pierre Gasly, but then falling back as well. But realistically, that one was a bit more understandable because it was the overtake that looked most likely to occur. Like, at this one, although Leclerc and Verstappen looked maybe likely to occur, there were overtakes going on in the background. It's just like, what do you want to see when you watch a race? Do you want to see those overtakes?
Definitely. I mean, the overtakes is kind of the biggest element of entertainment when we watch a Formula One race. And I think especially with how Verstappen was just ridiculously on the straights. I mean, the fact he was almost pulling away with Ferrari on DRS. It was like the overtake was next to him, which is extremely unlikely. Well, we saw all the accidents with the Alpines and McLarens and Haas's and Aston Martins.
Yeah, I mean, Jack, it wasn't only the TV direction, it was the commentary as well. I know you were in the pub, but you probably missed it when Crofty managed to mix up Vettel and Stroll for almost the entirety of a battle that was going on between the Haas's and the Aston Martins at about lap 20, 30 odd. It just wasn't very good coverage, was it? And it didn't help, and we'll come on to this, that A, the race wasn't good, and B, it was obviously marketed as an event, it was Americanized, but then the coverage of it was so, like, bad that it almost brought away from what they were trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably not the best person to talk about commentary, but it's certainly true that I had a difficult time of working out which Aston Martin was which, because they were up and down the field, they were in front of each other, switching over. I think probably it didn't help that they were both starting from the pit lane and both kind of similar strategies, so they were fighting with similar cars around them the whole time. Yeah, and we said earlier as well, both Haas's were kind of, I think probably both Haas's had interactions with both Aston Martins throughout the race, and I don't I don't blame Crofty for getting them mixed up. I haven't listened to it. I didn't know quite how egregious it was, but I can see why he might.
Yeah, and I mean, Bethany, I guess just to finish off this segment quickly, do you think anything will change over the next few races? Obviously, it's one apart from Monaco, obviously, it's one like TV direction. It's one, like, I guess, group that do the TV direction. Do you think they might take some of the criticism on board? Maybe using, like, those little small screens on the timing tower like they did some of the time, but using them a bit more regularly?
I think that there might be a small amount of change, but mostly things will probably stay the same. I feel like what's most likely to happen is just small, steady improvements over time. So we wouldn't really notice it until we compare this to, like, 3-4 years' time. But I don't think that we'll notice any difference.
Yeah. And I mean, Chinmay, do you think that something does need to change? Because obviously it's been a few races now where we've had this, where it's been cutting into the crowds. It's been an ongoing problem, and obviously we'll come on to this into the next segment. Obviously now F1 is so big in America. We'll talk about the Americanized nature and how, like, showy it was. It needs to come with that quality of coverage. It needs to come with that quality of race TV. Do you think maybe there's a bit of F1 want to push F1 TV Pro, and obviously on that you can have the split screens, you can follow your favourite driver. You may think that maybe they're trying to push that by making it a bit inferior on the normal TV coverage? Because, I mean, it was just something I'm thinking of. I can see Jack is giving me a bit of a look.
I've come up with some crazy conspiracy theories, but that's a little bit taking the cake. Sorry, I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably just focus more on the midfield a little bit, because the midfield is just where all the action really happens. We don't, especially with the state of how we see the tussle between Verstappen and Leclerc all the time, but I feel like it's just more the focus of the direction needs to be altered a bit in order just to show all the good action.
Yeah, so we will take a quick break, and once we come back, we'll discuss how the track was overall, and also, as I was saying, the Americanized nature of the whole week and whether we were happy with it. Welcome back to the Warwick F1 show, and we are going to talk about now. We'll talk about the track. Actually, obviously, it's a new track on the calendar. We've been discussing it during the break. Chinmay, there's one part of it you're not a fan of, is there?
It's more of a personal thing. I mean, I get what they're trying to do. I just don't like that chicane before the back straight. I just feel it may hamper a little bit of the racing, just especially the overtaking opportunity going down the back straight and going into that hairpin. I don't know. I feel like if they could just get rid of that, at least get rid of that chicane and just make it a smoother corner, and it could just make that racing a little bit better. But other than that, I don't really have any major problems with the circuit.
Yeah, I mean, Jack. I'll come to you, Bethany now. Chinmay there was saying that chicane bit clunky. Obviously, Lewis Hamilton comparing it to a B&Q car park, which is such an iconically British reference. But I absolutely love it. I mean, what are your views on the whole circuit as a whole?
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, like, it seemed like I liked the back straight into the smaller start finish straight. I think that was good. It's certainly something that isn't in many circuits that I can think of. So I can't actually think of a single one that has a longer back straight into, essentially, almost straight into a smaller start finish straight. I like that because it's almost like the long back straight is the setup, and then the start finish straight is where the overtakes come in. So I liked that, but I feel like with the chicane itself I liked, but I feel like it might have been in the wrong place on the circuit, being just before that, just the way it was placed, one corner before the back straight.
I mean, I'm trying to think of which circuits have shorter. I guess Silverstone's probably the closest one that would get, but obviously that's not straight onto the main straight. Other than that, I can't really think of any examples of a longer straight going onto a shorter straight. I mean, Jack, do you agree? Do you like the circuit?
I think, well, Spa's got you're flat out for a long time before the...
Yeah,
but it's not as straight, is it? No, I don't like it. I can't be any more frank than that. It's, I mean, you look at Jeddah, you look at Miami, you look at probably what Las Vegas is going to be, and they're all doing a very bad job of replicating Baku. Even Singapore and Baku have so much life in them because they're going through cities, and Jeddah and Miami are just dead. It's very Formula E circuit, which isn't necessarily a bad thing if, that's your vibe, but that's not the vibe that Formula One has, right? It's just dead walls, blank space, no life to it, no elevation, nothing that interests me at all.
Yeah.
So I think it's made it worse, the fact that a lot of the corners are just fast flowing. You can remember what Maggots and Beckett's look like, but when it's the sixth set of S's that you've seen in as many races, then you just lose track of it.
Yeah. I mean, do you think it is the walls? Because obviously, Chinmay, we think Maggots and Beckett's, and one of my favourite camera shots in F1 is it like looking up towards Copse Corner and just watching the cars snake their way through there. If you couldn't do that on Miami because just there are walls in the way. Do you think that? Do you agree with that, Jack? That it is just a bit soulless. Like you're watching the onboards and it's just concrete wall and like fence. It's just not. There's not much there.
I think this track reminds me a lot of Valencia. I think it's just because of all that walls, and they try to breathe life into it, but because of the walls, there's just not much there. And especially with Miami being how over the top it can be, and how it's one of the textbook America places, and I just don't. The track just doesn't really feel that vibe, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm going to defend the track in that I quite like it. I think the third sector especially is very good. I think I really like how it's a long straight. In that corner, as we saw, that you can make a lot of mistakes there. And then it leads into start-finish straight that we did see some overtakes at. If that start-finish straight was, I think, a few meters longer, I think it would be perfect. The first sector is just soulless. It's just a few S's, a turn, then another few S's. Before the chicane, I'm fine. I quite like that. Like little, it's technical, it's difficult. You still saw some like decent overtaking there. Obviously, the Mercedes had their battle. I think Magnussen overtook Vettel, or maybe it was the other way around. And then as Chinmay was saying, that little chicane, I guess it's clunky, but it's a bit of a challenge. I think if you put this track somewhere else, I think it would be better. Obviously, obviously it would be better, but I think it wouldn't be as criticised as it is. I mean, what do you think, Jack?
I was going to say that it's meant to be a showpiece track, but what I remember of it, I remember more seeing the cars on the highway behind it than seeing the actual Hard Rock Stadium, which is, I don't know. I don't know if it's the camera angles or just a setup. The marina we need to talk about that because that's hilarious, but
it's just the marina.
God awful.
You got yes marina and no marina.
Cardboard marina.
It's, I don't think, it just doesn't have any soul. Like, you could take the walls out and plonk it down somewhere and it would still have no elevation and it would still be all fast flowing corners and there'd still be nothing else.
Okay, let's say maybe, obviously it's not possible, but let's say you took that circuit, moved it away from the Hard Rock Stadium and plonked it in downtown Miami. Do you think that means it's a lot less criticised? Because obviously, as you were saying, Baku, Singapore, they are within the heart of the city. I mean, everyone's criticising the overpass that ran over the circuit. There's one like that in Singapore just before the final corner. It's just a lot higher and obviously at night, it's a lot less visible. Do you think that if it is just the location, it is just the soulless nature of the location, and if you did put it somewhere with a bit of soul, that people would find it a lot better?
America's cities are ugly. They're ugly. Singapore.
Well, that's how we're going to start.
Singapore is not quite Tokyo, but it has that vibe. It has that neon look to it. It's a little bit, almost a jungle feel. I can't really describe it, but it's something different. And Baku is absolutely historic. You're going through the castle section, and it's all old buildings, and it's just ridiculous that they let you race there at all. And then you come onto this crazy long straight along the beach. It's just like, wow. And I don't know anything about downtown Miami, and I really don't know anything about the car park around the Hard Rock Stadium, home of a football team that I don't watch and have never, and probably will never watch.
I'm gonna stand up for my previous role as head of sport and make sure you say American football team.
Yes, that was
disgraceful behaviour.
Or whatever.
Yeah, it's not even proper football.
I think that just proves my point more, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, America. Now we'll move on to a bit. We'll move on to sort of the Americanized nature as well as part of this. These races, especially Miami and with Vegas coming in next year, are now looking to be the showcase races. Realistically, there's going to be Monaco is going to be like the European showcase. Miami's going to be the East Coast showcase. Las Vegas is going to be the West Coast showcase. It's all about the glitz and the glamour. Do you think Las Vegas will be better? Because while Miami is in a car park around the Hard Rock Stadium, Las Vegas is going down the strip. You've got the Caesar's Palace, you've got the Balenciaga, the mini Statue of Liberty, the mini Eiffel Tower. Do you think that is going to provide the atmosphere that maybe we're missing at Miami?
I think 100%. I think because the fact that we're going to see F1 cars driving at 200 miles an hour past the Las Vegas Strip, past the casinos, and that too in the dead of night. I think just that it will at least look better, because at least Las Vegas, they chose the areas where there's actual atmosphere, whereas with Miami they just decided to use, of all things, a freaking car park.
Yeah, it's going to be the bright lights to the big city of Las Vegas.
Las Vegas revels in its own vanity, right? That is the actual approach of it. It's a little bit trashy, but it kind of lives it. Whereas that's I can accept that. That's acceptable. It's like Monaco and now Miami just bore me. It's just like, I really don't care about you or what you think or why your bodyguards are in the way or anything else. I just don't care. I want to see good racing. But Las Vegas, you know what you're in for, right?
Well, they call it Sin City for a reason,
Exactly.
don't they? I mean, Bethany, do you think that there is anything that can change with Miami? Obviously, we're here for 10 years now. I question the wisdom of giving people 10-year contracts for anything. We're here for 10 years now. Do you think there is something they could change, maybe moving the race later in the day? Obviously, as this podcast well knows, I've always been a big advocate for doing that race at night, because night races look better. Like, have you watched Singapore practice? It's the most dull, depressing looking thing imaginable.
Oh, yeah.
But as soon as that race goes into the night, it comes live. So do you think that Miami maybe needs to move looking a bit later? And obviously, that brings the weather in as well, because thunderstorms more likely in the afternoon. And then we might get some spicy racing because of that.
I hadn't actually thought of that, but that could be a good idea. Maybe even doing it so it's afternoon and then the race finishes at sunset, because we don't really have that kind of race. We only have night or sunset into night. We don't really have day into sunset.
I think Australia's normally the best example of day into sunset.
Okay.
Would you say?
Didn't think about that. But, hey, at least it's not the original Miami layout that they were thinking about in downtown Miami, which was literally a glorified hammer.
Yeah, but that would have gone over the bridge. That's the atmosphere that we're looking for.
Yeah, it would have been.
But would there have been... I'm not sure if there would have been much good overtaking, though.
There wasn't much, to be honest, other than that one spot at the end of the back straight. There's not really any overtaking spots on that track, is there?
I guess it's another part of I guess what I was thinking is another part of the track is the first sector. Obviously, with these new cars being quite difficult to warm up their tyres, it does make that first sector is quite interesting. Obviously, I think the one that I'm thinking of is Lando Norris. A second delay, and he loses, I'd say, 3 extra positions. So there are parts of the track that work, but I think we've sort of come to the conclusion that it's just where it is more than anything, Jack.
Yeah, it's naff. I mean, it's not Monaco awful, but it also doesn't have the redeeming qualities of Monaco. It's just kind of there, and I don't like it, but I'm not going to actively think about it any time that we're not racing on it. So.
Yes, I was just having a look. Actually, racing at sunset might not be such a good idea, considering that would mean that the drivers would be blinded by the sun all the way down the back straight, going into probably the heaviest braking zone.
Make it more exciting, wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. This is what
on the other hand, you'd get to see, literally, at the end of the race, you'd be looking at with the drivers coming towards you and the sun setting behind.
That would look so cool.
Yeah. A west-east start line would work really well with sunset.
I mean, Baku sometimes ends near the sunset. I know we're having a few issues with that. I think there are races that sort of end around the sunset, but...
At least I think that it would be east-west. I'm not sure. Yeah. The maps I've seen, some of them are flipped, so I don't know which way's north.
Yeah. So, I think that we'll move on from the track now, and we'll look at the event. The really, really American event that they don't, I'm sorry, but they don't help themselves. It's just really I want to like it, but I don't. Because
I don't even want to like it.
What happened? So there was the fake marina that was fake and weird and funny. Actually, it was just who
is it who did the swimming?
I was one of the Sky people.
Yeah.
I can't remember who, but the fact that they didn't get Antonio Giovinazzi to walk on that water was the biggest crime imaginable. The grid walk before the race, I haven't watched it because I value my eyeballs and my ears, and I don't want to subject them to that level of cringe. I mean, I think from what I've heard, Martin Brundle dealt with it perfectly by just not caring.
They're normally busy, aren't they? But my God, they just let anyone and everyone who vaguely is a human being that people have seen before onto the circuit.
I think
don't know.
It's 5 years away before we're invited to the Miami Grand Prix.
Probably, hopefully.
Hey, if this podcast goes viral, then you're sorted, aren't you?
Absolutely, this is what we're looking for. Make us go viral so we can go hang out with David Beckham. Then the race, obviously, they didn't find a way to make that American, though I did see a good TMF Marduk tweet, which is like, I wouldn't be surprised if they stopped this race halfway through to do a halftime show. Can you imagine them just engineering a red flag, like, just paying off, like, Lance Stroll and Nicholas Latifi to spin it in the wall?
Yeah, I was just thinking Nicholas Latifi will probably just be paid to do it at this rate.
That's what NASCAR does, isn't it? They have, like, 3 stoppages.
Oh, NASCAR, I know fans of NASCAR were absolutely outraged by how their point system worked for the last few years, and that's a story for another time.
Well, it's been like 18 years or something, I think, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm not an expert. I'm not an expert on NASCAR. I want to be, because I like NASCAR. Then we thought we'd gone back to normal. We thought the Americans might have redeemed themselves. Then there was a police escort through why? Just why? Why? Chinmay, tell me why.
It's America.
Oh, I haven't even talked about the post-race interviews where he called him Chuck Leclerc. Which is the biggest crime. Which is arguably the biggest crime the Americans have committed against, like, French adjacent nations.
Can I just say, sorry, I was watching at the pub and then I left after the race finished to catch a bus back. So this is the first I'm hearing of all of this.
Oh, bad.
I've heard about this afterwards, and not just that, the football helmets on the podium.
Oh, what's that? Why?
What annoys me about that is they put the weird chin strap, whatever it is, mouthguard thing on. Like, why do you need it? It's dangling. You really don't care about authenticity, do you? Because you're American.
I'm sorry, but signs are ridiculous in that helmet.
They all look ridiculous. Everyone looked ridiculous. And then they had ticker tape that just landed on their heads, which I feel like summed it up well. It just summed up how it's going at the moment. Obviously, this has all come realistically from Drive to Survive, and I was thinking about Drive to Survive because we were discussing it, I want to say, before qualifying in the group chat, in that I've always thought the more you watch F1, the more you dislike Drive to Survive. And that new fans, once they start getting into F1, start to dislike Drive to Survive more as a result. But the thing is, Jack, it's good at getting new fans in, and that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, I think the earlier ones were better. You got an insight into, I don't think Nico Hulkenberg would be as popular without it. I don't think Gunther Steiner would be as popular without it. It gives you insight into those characters. But the more that become commonplace, the more that we saw it in regular media as well. And then suddenly Drive to Survive's purpose isn't clear anymore. And then they've gone away from what they were doing originally and made it sensationalist. So yeah, it's been rubbish the last couple of seasons.
I mean, Chinmay, what do you think, about the whole Americanization of the sport? It's been now 5 years since Liberty Media bought F1 for $4.5 billion. Elon Musk could have bought F1 10 times. He really should have.
No. He's a weirdo.
Yeah, but I think he'd have made it electric. Why didn't he buy FE? They should buy Formula E. But yeah. What do you think of the Americanization of the sport now? I think that has arguably it reached its pinnacle at Austin last year, but there was almost a certain novelty factor of Shaq turning up in a lowride, Chevrolet with horns on the front.
Yeah, moments of that I actually like, because it's funny and it's just weird. But I think just Miami was just way too much. Things were just all over the place. But going back to your question about Americanization, I'm about 80% happy with it. Americanization is bringing that tiny fan base in America, and the fact that I think Formula 1 is now starting to make its own mark among the other American motorsports, and NASCAR and IndyCar especially. I think Formula 1 is now starting to make its mark again, and it's good to see that it's a good 20 years of struggles just to penetrate into that market. So, but overall, I think I'm happy because it brings in more fans and makes the sport even bigger than it already is. But I'm just feel that I hope it doesn't become too Americanized.
Yeah, I agree to a similar point. I think that there should be a certain degree of Americanization, especially in the American races. But I feel like that's more to do with that F1 should be a worldwide sport, and they should be celebrating the countries that they visit, the cultures and so on. And I feel like that those kind of things that they're doing for Miami, maybe not, I don't think they should be doing it to that degree, but I feel like they should be doing it to a less degree and for every race, trying to promote the places that they're visiting in a way and try to make a better world in a way as well.
True, but it's not it's such, Austin is like old town America, like small town America, like vibes, just chill, have a beer, things like that. Obviously, Las Vegas, I think as we spoke about a few minutes ago, is gonna lean very heavily into the Vegas culture of like gambling, all of that rock and roll culture, and I think everyone accepts that. But it almost feels, Jack, like this Miami race shows like the worst part of America and just like the influencer social media culture side that no one outside of, when you think of America and you think of the bad parts of America outside of it, aside from all the politics and stuff like that, that's what you think. You think the vanity, you think the Instagram lifestyle, and that's sort of what we saw here.
Yeah, I mean, I also think about a little bit of the South as well, but again, I can appreciate you've kind of gone into NASCAR, IndyCar country there. You're kind of right. I don't think we need a third US Grand Prix, but Las Vegas is going to do a better job of showcasing what the US should be about. Of course, we're theorising because it's not here yet, but it should be better than Miami, at least I hope. I do think you were saying earlier about how much it should be Americanized. I do think if that counters kind of what we have in the Middle East a little bit more, I don't want to go to Jeddah. I'd rather go to Miami than Jeddah as a place. I think the racing's a bit better than there. But if it takes going to America to get rid of some of those places, that's fine with me. I just really wish they'd tone it down just a little bit, just a little.
It's the police escort that pushed me over the edge. It was just so unnecessary. I can accept the helmet because they looked alright. It wasn't too terrible, the helmets, and it didn't affect it that much. The marina was just objectively funny, but the police escort it's just like, why? It didn't need to happen. It was very badly done as well. It's just like, if you're gonna do it, and do it well. It's just so America. I mean, Chinmay, obviously Jack says there, we're hoping that Miami pushes out like Jeddah, Abu Dhabi, things like that. Because for all its flaws, Miami doesn't have missiles in it. But
for now.
But is there do you think there's the risk that instead Miami pushes out the races that we love, that pushes out the Spas, the Monzas, the Suzukas,
Nürburgring, Hockenheim? Oh wait, they've gone already.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking as well.
Exactly. The German Grand Prix has gone already, maybe returning with the return of Audi. Turkey, Malaysia, the ones that are at purpose-built racetracks and not in car parks. Does it feel like that could be the way we're going, especially with this now, Las Vegas coming in? Does that makes the season 24 races long, doesn't it? Next year so far.
Probably. I think they're looking to make it 25 next year or something like that.
That's too many races.
Yeah, it is way too much.
Can't watch F1 25 times a year. But do you think that this is the way that could be going? Do you think that it's the beginning of the end, or do you think there's going to be enough pushback if like a Spa goes off the calendar, if a Silverstone goes off the calendar, if the Monza goes off?
If one of those places goes off the calendar, I think F1 fans are going to go. They're literally going to riot at the Liberty Media offices, I think. But I'm just that is probably my biggest fear of Formula One. It's following sports like football and cricket, which are really just becoming more money focused and just business like than anyone else, and just pushing out races that we all love in Germany, Hungary, even if it's something like Hungary or Italia, Silverstone, that we're going to stick to places like Miami, Jeddah, Abu Dhabi, Qatar. There's all races that, as a consistent, Formula One fans just do not like. This is probably the only fear that I've really got, to be honest.
I mean, there's that thought, Bethany, as well. And there's also the thought that we might end up with a calendar that's like 50% like normal races. That's like 50%, I don't know, Spain, Belgium, Italy, Silverstone, so on and so forth, and then like 50% showcases, and you're almost going to lose the races in the middle that are like a bit of both, I guess, like your Australias, maybe even your Austins as well. I'm trying to think of what's another like medium key race that sort of just exists.
Bahrain?
Yeah, Bahrain's a very...
Yeah.
It's probably the prime one.
Do you think we might just... Do you think it might just turn into traditionalists and then, like, proper contemporary, like, event showcases, things like that?
I'm not sure, to be honest. Like, we're definitely at a crossroads of some sort, but which direction everyone's going to head, I don't think anybody can predict at the moment. And if anything, that might be the most worrying bit for me, just because there's no way of telling how it will go, whether that's going to be for the better or the worse.
Well,
it's got real existential real quick.
We've moved on to discussing the future of F1. But we'll bring it back and we'll take another quick break in a few seconds. I'm going to finish off this segment. What would each of you do to change the Miami Grand Prix for next year? We've discussed the track. We've discussed the event. You get one thing that you think for the 2023 Miami Grand Prix you think would make it better. And I'll start with you, Jack.
How sensible does it have to be?
It could... so tell me and I'll let you know.
Well, alright, I'll go completely ridiculous. Build an arch. Oh,
just leave.
No, they have to drive through the stadium. There you go.
I wouldn't say that's not a bad idea.
I mean, we have that in Mexico.
Oh, actually,
I don't think that quite
you
counts.
know what?
No,
actually, that's a very good
That's
idea.
an open stadium.
Can you imagine them driving, like, so they've got the pitch, and they just drive straight across it, 70,000 fans in the stadium. Oh, that's gonna...
Put the start-finish straight in.
Exactly. Right, we have basically solved the Miami Grand Prix. I don't even know what these two suggestions are, but that one's winning. But I will come to you, Bethany, to find out what you think.
Honestly, I definitely can't top that. But I'd go for something that's probably more realistic, but I feel like could still improve. Like, I do think the track needs a little bit of a change, but I'm not sure if it needs that much of a change. Just a couple of small tweaks, like getting rid of the chicane or at least moving it somewhere else in the track. I feel like just a couple small changes to the track like that could make it much more entertaining to watch the race.
Okay, and Chinmay, your one?
Well, you just stole my one. Just removing the chicane and kind of making it more of a hairpin type thing. Or we have or they could do something similar to Canada, but the thing is, I would just remove one of the straights. You know how like Canada we have like the chicane in the middle of two straights? To do something like that. But it's pretty much just doing something about that chicane.
Now I'm thinking what mine would be. I think moving the start time. What time did it start in Miami?
3:30 local time.
So it ended at what, 5:30? What time sunset in Miami?
Probably like
they weren't aware of the weather. I'm going to keep waffling while Bethany Googles it. But I do think just moving the time of the race, because I think sometimes sunsets at 7:56. Really?
Surprisingly early.
I would say it was quite late. Really? I think just moving I know it doesn't work for Europe because 8:30 was fairly late. I didn't cook before the race, so that was a mistake. And then I had dinner at 11:30. But I think just moving the time of the race, because I think the issue we have that street circuits have, especially if they're concrete, obviously Baku and Singapore, not even Singapore, Baku and like Monaco get away with it because it's just like nice architecture, or like the elevation change that we see at Monaco. But it just looks so soulless in the day.
And then it wouldn't clash with the NASCAR either, because they started at the same time, didn't they?
I'd kind of imagine F1 really cares about NASCAR.
No, I guess globally it doesn't really have much of an impact, but I imagine domestically it had a little bit. And also,
sorry, just remembered, F1 doesn't really care about when the races are for outside the location itself, particularly recently, because the fact that like they're going for whenever's best for that location, which I think is a good thing. For example, with Las Vegas, it's going to be it's midnight our time.
No, I think it's about 2:30 in the morning.
Okay.
Which is going to be great after you've been out on a Saturday night. You can come back and watch the F1 race. It's just but I just think moving it a bit later in the day, making the weather, or not even the weather, making the sun set, like the whole Miami techno vibe of the sun setting over the sea with the palm trees. You can get that if it's at the sunset.
Well, they need to put some palm trees in first.
Yes, we do need palm trees. just put gravel traps in. I don't understand what this just add a few gravel traps and the race will be better. Welcome back to the Warwick F1 show. We are back, and we're gonna actually discuss what happened on the track, because although there wasn't in that much, there was enough to fill the remaining hour or so. And we're gonna start with, I'd say probably the third best team on the grid at the moment, Mercedes. So Lewis Hamilton, bit of a poor start, dropping back behind Gasly and Alonso after being absolutely punted by Alonso at the start. Obviously very, very apt considering we were racing around the Hard Rock Stadium. Don't shake your head, Jack. That was a very good joke. It was a very good joke. But getting past Alonso and actually being able to get past Gasly this time, unlike last time in Imola, and then sort of just having a fairly standard race, managing to get past Bottas, but his teammate George Russell qualifying 12th, running up to 5th before the safety car hit, pitting for fresh medium tyres and getting past Bottas and Hamilton to take 5th place. I'd say George Russell has to be very, very happy with how that race went.
Oh yeah, and I think especially knowing that he's the only driver this whole season to be finishing in the top 5 this whole season so far. I mean,
such a weird statistic. How is that Mercedes and how has George Russell done that? It's very impressive.
A lot of luck.
I mean, yeah, he's had some insane luck with the safety car this year.
I mean, what? Australia, he gained a position. I guess he got lucky at the start in Imola because he was just really in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, he gained
11th about 5th.
2 positions in Bahrain. It was Bahrain, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Bahrain because of obviously the Red Bulls forgetting how to work. But
where did he finish then? Was it
4th?
Bahrain was 4th.
Yeah, because Hamilton was 3rd. Yeah. And then obviously at this race probably climbing from what would have been 7th. He might have been able to get Bottas.
Yeah,
maybe.
I think. Yeah, I don't think any higher than 7th. I don't think.
Yeah. So, I mean, that puts George Russell on 50 odd points. How many is it, Jack?
59.
59 points compared to Lewis Hamilton's 36.
I don't know. I didn't write down that
okay.
far. I didn't do.
Oh no!
I didn't write down all 20 positions.
Yes, 36.
36.
Oh,
See,
my God.
I do know something.
He is the encyclopedia, isn't he?
Yes.
It's just like pay attention to Lewis Hamilton.
Oh, whatever.
But
Yeah, Bottas has 30.
oh, he's only 6 points behind. It's just like, how is that man doing so? I actually quite like Valtteri Bottas. He's done very well.
I think Valtteri's having the time of his life right now. Just the fact that he's in an Alfa Romeo and he is beating the Mercedes in some places.
I still maintain that Alpha's probably the 4th.
I think it's just as fast as Mercedes. I think Zhou he's not got that much talent, I'm afraid, but he's able to.
Ooh.
I just
we were praising Zhou last week.
Well, I wasn't ill last week, so that's why. F2 and F3, I like to follow them a lot, but he spent a long time in F2 and he didn't really have the performance that probably would be expected of people like Russell, Norris, Leclerc, even Schumacher, who's not, you don't think of him as a real good driver, but he was significantly better than Zhou throughout F2 and F3. So, yeah, he's clearly in a good car and in my mind not doing quite as well as he should.
Yeah, I think I reckon it's Alpha, Alpine and McLaren probably oscillate around.
Oh yeah, it's absolute chaos. They're all faster than each other, corner by corner, aren't they? So.
But going back to Mercedes, we almost saw them back to their old ways on Friday. It seemed like they could challenge for at least maybe the top 3 and even pole, and then Saturday comes around, they try something different, and that car just falls off a cliff in terms of pace. It's a very difficult one to understand, isn't it, Jack?
Yeah, I think they were trying to get the setup right. I think they had new kit and they were pushing a little bit harder than everyone else. When you look at the times that were in practices, Russell was the first person to go under 1:30, but then the quali, I can't remember exactly what the times, but it was definitely in the 28s. It might have been 28.6 or 28.7 or something.
I can remember Verstappen did a 28.9, and then they were about 0.3 ahead of that, so probably...
Yeah, so they were more than a second ahead. Being more than a second faster later. If the Mercedes don't speed up at all, then, suddenly you're not making Q3, surprisingly. So,
I mean, Bethany, do you think that the Mercedes did show some genuine pace, and that if they do get their car right, they can begin to challenge for the top 4 with the Ferraris and the Red Bulls, or do you think it was a bit of a false dawn?
I think it was somewhere in between, to be honest. I feel like that, personally, I feel like what was most likely the case was that Ferrari and Red Bull didn't fully show their hand, in addition to Mercedes doing well, and then just not quite getting that same amount of performance during the qualifying and race. I feel like if Mercedes managed to sort all their issues out, I feel like they could probably compete for podiums, but I don't think they'd quite be able to compete for the win, even on a good day at the moment.
Yeah, I think the win's out of the question, Chinmay, but do you think it's out of the question by the end of the season? Obviously, we've seen in Lewis Hamilton's career, he's had bad cars. I think 2009, 2013... maybe a bit less than 2013. I think that car was just beset by the issue that it would burn through its tyres in about 7 seconds. But 2009 especially, Hamilton comes back in the end. He wins in Hungary, he wins in Singapore or Abu Dhabi. I can't remember. I don't know something. Oh no. But do you think the Mercedes will come back? I mean, would you say that out of all the teams you had the most faith in Mercedes to, I guess, return and start fighting for wins?
Not more faith, more expectation. Just knowing especially how Mercedes' biggest strength is actually the second is late season development. It's just, you've seen that the biggest example I can think of is 2018, where you can say Ferrari and Mercedes were level, but then come Belgium, Mercedes were miles ahead of everybody else. So I do expect that at least, probably by the end of the season, Mercedes will have at least a win or 2 under their belts.
But obviously, at the moment, it's looking like George Russell is going to be getting that win over Lewis Hamilton. This is the 3rd race out of the 5 that... Oh no, it's the 4th race out of the 5 that Russell has beaten Hamilton. 4th race in a row. Even, obviously, only Bahrain, where Hamilton came 3rd and Russell came 4th. Obviously, 2 of them due to safety cars in Australia and obviously here at Miami, and maybe that changes it a bit. But do you think Hamilton is getting threatened a bit by Russell at Mercedes, or do you think it's just a natural progression of things that the successor starts to take the crown?
I think it's. I think they've got good pace, to be honest. I think relative to each other, both of them are very talented. I think it's clear from their prior achievements, even if maybe the car this year isn't really supporting that so much. But yeah, I think I've always been kind of a not supporter. That's not the right word, but I always think Russell's been underrated, and I think he's going to be just as underrated at the end of the year because I'm betting my money that Mercedes aren't going to be competing for race wins, at least not kind of outside of what we've seen, Monza the last couple of years, that kind of chaos race. Yeah. You wouldn't have said last year that Alpine had a race-winning car, for example. So, you can never rule anything out. But, I think Russell and Hamilton, they're not fallen off as such. Maybe Hamilton has a bit more trouble in traffic because he's spent 8 years not having to deal with it. But, they're both very quick.
Yeah, but this, as I was saying, this is the second race out of the 4, Bethany, that Russell has benefited from safety car. At some point, the luck, I guess, has to run out. And do you think that at the moment it seems like Hamilton is getting beaten quite comprehensively by George Russell. But realistically, if you look at it just purely on, maybe not in race performance, but purely on, if you beat your teammate, you get 1 point. If you don't beat them, then it gets 0. Last 4 races, without safety cars, it would be 2-2. Obviously, the 2 that Russell wins, he wins a lot more comprehensively, because the 2 he's won in Saudi Arabia, Hamilton finished 10th or something. Imola, 13th, and I don't want to talk about that anymore. But do you think that George Russell's luck will run out at some point, and do you think that Hamilton will start to sort of bring it back and maybe close up the points deficit, which at the moment is quite a substantial gap?
Yeah, I'd say that Hamilton's had a couple of bad races, and I feel like he will catch up. He's got that experience. He'll be able to fight back against George over the course of the season, I'd say. But at the same time, there is a bit of an element of you make your own luck. It was George's decision to take that risk and stay out for longer, gamble on there being a safety car of VSC. So, in a way, it wasn't luck in a way, but in another way it was, if that makes sense.
How smug do you reckon he looked in his helmet when he heard about VSC? I bet it was very smug.
I mean, he was probably happy. It's just like, I'm a Hamilton fan. It's just like, he's not doing well, and it makes me sad. But obviously, Hamilton maybe had an opportunity to beat Russell. Obviously, he could have pitted under the safety car as well. And this is something, and he obviously didn't. This is something we've seen with Lewis Hamilton in particular. Over the last year and a bit, there's just an unwillingness to take a risk, almost. Like, I'm thinking, what other races were there? I'm sure there were a few. But Saudi Arabia...
You could argue that Abu Dhabi at the end of last season, he should have pitted, right?
I think Abu Dhabi was a bit more cut and dry. If the rules are applied correctly, then it's not really an issue, because he would have lost.
But he still stick with the status quo. Even, you can say in hindsight that, well, even in hindsight,
he would have lost track position, wouldn't he? And then
but he would have been in the same situation that Verstappen would have been. It would have been an easy overtake.
Verstappen would have also pitted.
I don't know.
Because Verstappen, I can't remember. I don't remember.
No, I think the team actually overpowered. If I remember this correct, I think Lewis did want to pit, but the team overpowered him.
Okay.
Saying that they didn't want to lose track position or something like that, and Lewis just conceded.
I mean, do you think they should have pitted him? Do you think that he would have come through? Obviously, he gained. I think
Lewis, even if he lost track position, Lewis would have got that in that lap, because that Mercedes is just quick in a straight line compared to that Red Bull last year. Red Bull was atrocious in straight line.
Yeah. And how times have changed from that. So we are going to take another quick break. Obviously, we're talking for a long time for our second segment, so voice box is getting a bit sore. But we will come back after the break, and we will talk Red Bull, and we will talk Ferrari. And we're going to discuss, do Ferrari need to start upgrading their car now? Obviously, we saw at the start of the season it was very close. But Red Bull, Verstappen, every race he's finished, he's won. Do Ferrari need to start bringing in substantial upgrades? They were saying they weren't going to, but is now the time. Welcome back to the Warwick F1 show, and we are going to now talk about Ferrari and Red Bull. Easily the two teams that are going to challenge for the title this season, and I think by now we know the two drivers that are going to challenge as well, Leclerc and Verstappen. It was an interesting one at the start of the season. Obviously, we had some very good battles at Saudi Arabia and Bahrain between the two, where they were jostling for position, one overtaking the other after one lap after the other. Australia, but from then on, Australia is very Leclerc. Obviously, he gets the Grand Slam. He can't do better than that. Verstappen gets the Grand Slam in Imola. Arguably, maybe even a better Grand Slam. He's, wins the sprint. The only thing he couldn't do is did he get pole?
Yeah.
Yeah, he did. And obviously, I guess a super Grand Slam would be leading every lap of the sprint as well. That's like an ultra mega Grand Slam. You get 20 points and a cookie for that. But and Miami, Red Bull did seem to have the measure on Ferrari, with Verstappen overtaking in lap 9. Leclerc looking like he was maybe going to come back after the safety car, but then falling away again, and Verstappen taking quite a comfortable victory. Ferrari have said, Jack, that they're not going to bring upgrades until they get a better handle of the car. It seems to be the philosophy of a lot of the Ferrari-powered teams. I know Haas in particular are another team that have said that. Do you think it's time for those upgrades to start coming in? Maybe they're not completely comfortable with the car, but Red Bull seem to have a very, very quick car in a straight line. Maybe Ferrari's better in the downforce. Maybe that will benefit them in like tracks like Monaco, Spain, obviously coming up in 2 weeks. But do you think Ferrari need to start bringing those upgrades to keep up with Red Bull?
Yeah, to me it seems like Ferrari have the raw pace, but they're really struggling once the tyres get hot and things start to get a little bit more worn. And if I can see that, unless I'm very wrong, I'm assuming they can see that as well. I think by now they should have a handle on what needs to be improved, and they should have an idea of what goes on the car. Of course, I'm not going to walk into any garage and say, I know what I'm doing, or I know what the philosophy should be. But if I didn't know what Ferrari were doing, I'd be looking into upgrades, of course.
So you're not like the average F1 Twitter user that does know what they're doing.
I don't think anybody on Twitter is real. I think they're all fake somehow.
We're just all fake. I mean, Twitter's just fun sometimes. And sometimes it's not fun, especially when we go to a race called Abu Dhabi. That was just not fun. But, I mean, Bethany, do you think that Verstappen does have the measure of Leclerc in particular? Because it's interesting. This time last season, we were at... What was the fourth race last season? Was it Portimao?
Yes, I think it was Portimao.
So, it was Portimao. At the second race of the season, we had... It might have been Spain. I don't know.
No, I think Spain was fifth that year.
So
it was Spain.
It was Spain. Portimao was third.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, sorry, I forgot.
Yeah, so it was Hamilton, Verstappen, Hamilton.
So yeah, at this point in the season...
Oh wait, no.
Oh yeah, no. It was.
No, we just had race 5.
Oh, I can't remember.
It's race 5 was Monaco.
Oh yeah, Monaco. Oh, I hate that track so much. But at this point in the season, we had seen a collision between Hamilton and Verstappen. We'd had another close one as well in Spain, obviously Hamilton being cut across by Verstappen. But it's been fairly civil between Verstappen and Leclerc. I'm going to throw in a Jack Rowe special conspiracy theory here. That Verstappen knew Hamilton was the better driver, so had to take more risks and be more aggressive.
That sounds very much like a Will Kingswood conspiracy theory.
Absolutely.
That's a Hamilton fanboy conspiracy theory.
It might be ever so slightly biased. But do you think that there is the theory, or do you think that it's a possibility that Verstappen thinks he's better than Leclerc, so races a bit more normally? Or do you think that maybe he knows Leclerc and how he's going to race, so has the measure on him in that regard?
I think it's a combination of, first, him knowing Leclerc better from having raced in the junior Formula together, and also I think that just over the course of the last 12 months, I think he's matured more. He's been fighting for that championship. He's won that championship, and he's just matured more as a driver through that and through the consequences of his actions. For example, in Italy.
I think it's 3 things. I think 1, the new cars make it easier to overtake and to follow. You don't need to make such ridiculous lunges and off the circuit shenanigans to get ahead, because you can get within that 1 second margin quite easily. I do think it's because Verstappen and Leclerc, similar ages, kind of similar routes to the top, to the teams that they've been in, they kind of think in a similar way. And third, I think it is because Leclerc is less aggressive than Hamilton. I think we saw that Silverstone last year when Hamilton throws it up the inside of Verstappen, takes him out, and then later on in the race does the same to Leclerc, and Leclerc backs out of it. So
I mean, Chinmay, do you think that it could be partially the penalty points as well? Obviously, Verstappen's penalty points don't get wiped. When is next penalty points going to get wiped? It'll be...
So it's just a year after they're awarded, regardless of...
So it would have been the Italian ones, I think, would have been the first ones. I think you got some in Italy, not Brazil. not sure how, but Italy, Saudi Arabia, I think there was some more in there, but I can't quite remember when they were. Do you think that maybe once the penalty points get wiped away, once the title battle starts to ramp up a bit, that we might see the more aggressive Verstappen come out? Or
I think the penalty points will not matter to him. He is just going to send it as soon as that battle starts to get more aggressive. Once we really get into the midst of that title battle, he'll really stick his arms out. I don't think that the penalty system is going to really matter to him at all.
And I mean, is there a specific race you're looking at maybe? Like, obviously, Charles Leclerc, Monaco, they don't tend to have good luck. Baku's obviously has been a hot point in the championship battle, Silverstone last year. I'm gonna make you make a prediction right now. When's the first time that Leclerc and Verstappen collide?
Ooh. I wanna say Silverstone.
Ooh.
Again.
The heat of battle in Britain.
Yeah.
The battle of Britain. If it comes true.
And I want to make another slight prediction as well. Leclerc crashes into the castle section again.
Well, that can be your 2-point prediction when we get to Baku.
Yeah.
You know what? I'll give you that can be your 3-point prediction.
That'll probably be my 3.
Baku. But obviously they're not the only drivers.
I was going to say, I think it'd be ironic if, I'm not sure ironic is the right word, but if Leclerc was somehow taken out at Monaco, because he's not had good luck there, has he?
I mean,
no.
I feel like that's going to happen. That's going to be one of my predictions, is Charles Leclerc doesn't finish the Monaco Grand Prix. But obviously, they're not the only 2 drivers in Ferrari and Red Bull. We've also got Carlos Sainz and Sergio Perez, who had their own small battle. One particularly funny moment of the race was when Perez lost 5 seconds in one lap, and the engineer explained it by the fact you lost the toe. Now, I'm no expert, but I don't think the toe is quite that powerful. Do you think, Jack, that Perez would have beaten Sainz without that issue?
I don't know, man. If you lost the toe, then you lost the toe, haven't you? Yeah, I mean, in theory, probably, but only assuming that Sainz has that couple second delay in the pit stops that he did have anyway. So, it's all ifs and buts. Both of them had issues that weren't their fault, and both of them kind of, I think it ended up pretty fair as a result.
Yeah, I mean, Bethany, do you think this is redemption for Sainz? Obviously, he's had 2 tough races, finally finishing on the podium again after his new contract was announced. Do you think that this is Sainz getting back on the road, and especially maybe beating Sergio Perez as well? Because as much as we say Verstappen and Leclerc are matched, I think Perez and Sainz seem to be fairly well matched. So you want to be beating the second driver of your team's opponent.
Yeah, I'd say that this is probably the start to getting back to where he was for Sainz, but I feel like last season, if I remember correctly, of course, Leclerc probably would have won in Monaco if he started, but Sainz beat Leclerc in the standings last year, if I remember correctly. So I think that actually Sainz and Leclerc are much closer than Verstappen and Perez. And so as a result, I think that Sainz is probably better than Perez. And so he should be consistently ahead, I'd say, actually. So I think that he should be occasionally actually challenging Verstappen and Leclerc at the front. So I think this is just the start. I don't think this is the end of him getting back to where he was previously.
Okay, and obviously Sainz could have put it on pole at the race had he not made a mistake at the final corner. Maybe we're going to see the first Sainz pole or win at the Spanish Grand Prix in 2 weeks. We'll just cover a few more of the drivers that we saw going around the track on yesterday, actually. One particular standout, Alex Albon, that red hair somehow working wonders for him, getting Williams' second and third points of the season. Do you think it's more fortunate, Chinmay, than Australia, more down to a bit of luck, bit of misfortune for those above him, but it's still a good result?
Yeah, it probably was a little bit of misfortune, but he was part of 7-car DRS train. So, but yeah, I think I want to put him to P9, well, really P10, because obviously Alonso had that 5 second penalties. I think it's just solid. It's just a really solid drive and start to the season he's had, to be honest.
Yeah. And someone else that scored points, Bethany, Lance Stroll. Obviously, he's had a tough start to the season, scoring Aston Martin's 6th point, I think. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a good race. It was a good race for some of the back place teams. I mean, do you think that's good for F1 that it does appear that let's say the midfield teams, the lower to midfield, maybe we remove Mercedes and definitely Ferrari and Red Bull from that equation, but it seems like all teams can score points at the moment. Maybe not all drivers, because Nicholas Latifi's still on the grid. But all teams can score points, which can only be good for F1, can't it?
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely good for F1 that all teams are able to score points, and there's going to be more of these crazy races. So I think that every team's going to get into the double digits of points by the end of the season. I wouldn't be surprised if that happened. And I think that that's just a good thing for F1 in general.
I don't think that's ever happened before. All teams scoring. Yeah, I don't know why I'm looking at Jack like he's got the answer.
Yeah,
I'm the encyclopedia. But no, I can't.
If you can remember that every single team's points finish in all of F1 history, all 70 odd years of it, then I would be very impressed. I'm
making the assumption that most years there were slow enough cars that they didn't score points. There might be like one year in the 1970s where everyone scored points, but I was sort of assuming that because I'd say these cars are closest in terms of results. But who else had a good race? Esteban Ocon, obviously coming back from 20th to finish 8th. He's having a very solid season. Who else? Oh, we forgot to talk about Aston Martin. I love them. They don't help themselves sometimes. How do you forget to take the fuel out of the fridge? Explain how there's a chain of command here that probably goes all the way up to the mic crack. Yes, I'm aware. How does everyone forget to take the fuel out of the fridge, which ends up meaning they have to start in the pit lane?
I don't know. Maybe short circuits.
But it almost worked for them, didn't it, Jack? That it seemed like the hard tyre runners benefited. That they had the best strategy in the end, because they ran the hard tyres basically up until the perfect point at pit stop, at which point the safety car came, could all pit, and that is why we've seen such a topsy-turvy finishing result. Yeah,
I think a lot of it was due to the fact that it's really hard to overtake at Miami. The track's not great offline, so they spent the whole race getting in everyone's way when they had no right to be there, and then when the safety car came out, they benefited from the fact that Ricciardo and everyone else hadn't been able to gain the 30 seconds they probably should have. But yeah, no, both of them had a bit of misfortune towards the end of the race. I don't think there's any malicious intent or even fault for either of their incidents.
I know. Mick hit Vettel. The student hit the master.
Yeah, at least nothing is soured between them, though.
No, I'm pretty. Mick can punt off Vettel, and he'd probably still give him a hug after it.
I think they actually did. I think they actually did, if I'm not mistaken.
I felt a bit bad for Mick because obviously was looking on for his first points in F1.
Yeah, I think he was in P9 when he shunted with Vettel.
Yeah. His season almost feels like a George Russell 2021 season. So like, the points are going to come.
You just don't know when.
You don't know when, exactly. But I think that ends off the coverage of the Miami Grand Prix. Obviously, a good race in the end, I think we'd have to say. The ending in particular, probably very good. The beginning, slightly less so. But we will judge if it's a good race, as one of my predictions was, whether it was a good race. And join us after the break when we look at our predictions for the Miami Grand Prix, when we look at our predictions for the Spanish Grand Prix, and also just preview the Spanish Grand Prix track in general. Welcome back to the final segment of the Warwick F1 show. We are going to be looking at the Spanish Grand Prix, our predictions for the Spanish Grand Prix, and our predictions from the Miami Grand Prix. We'll start with just a review of the Spanish Grand Prix in general. It's one of those tracks, Jack, that you'd have to say if it got lost off the calendar, not many people would be unhappy about it?
Yeah, I think it's fair enough. It's hopefully this year will be better, but like they made changes to it was not hairpin, but that kind of awkward left-hander uphill thing, and that made it better. I don't know why they have the chicane at the end of the track. It just kills all the momentum there. You know, you slow down the start-finish straight. It's awful. Don't like it. I think they talk about safety concerns, but in my mind, it's almost identical to Austria last corner, and no one says that's dangerous. So, yeah,
it is a weird one because I've never thought that corner was. So, what bit of the corner is unsafe? Is it the first? So, if we take out the chicane, it's two flowing right-handers. Are we more concerned about the second one or the first one?
The last corner on the track.
The last corner. Can they not extend it out a bit more? Is there is there a hill?
But there's gravel trap on the outside, and then it's a barrier, and then there's bits of paddock or whatever.
Well, that's where you remove the gravel trap. If realistically, if it's really objectively, asphalt runoffs are safer, but they're boring. Gravel trap runoffs should be improved or should be put in when it's not too unsafe. But if it gets too unsafe, I don't know, Puon, we need an asphalt runoff there because it's a very fast corner. I think put an asphalt runoff at the final corner, then we might have a chance. And it might make the race better. I mean, Bethany, do you have any good memories of the Spanish Grand Prix in particular?
I don't particularly have any memories of the Spanish Grand Prix in particular, full stop, because it's always just a pretty boring race from what I can remember.
Obviously, last year, Lewis Hamilton taking that victory, I think was his... No, it wasn't his 100th. It was 100th pole position. That was it. I knew there was something big that happened at the race. Obviously, Verstappen getting past him, but Hamilton doing the tried and trusted be behind your opponent, then pit, and then gain up 20 seconds in that many laps. That was employed a few times, both by Hamilton and by Verstappen last season. Obviously, Verstappen doing it in France. But we will move back to the Spanish Grand Prix when we do our predictions for it. And we are going to look at our predictions for the Miami Grand Prix. Unfortunately, Chinmay has to leave us, but so I will be taking the reins here, and I will be looking at what we said we thought would happen. It's currently 13-12 to me in the scores. And obviously, scoring as usual, we predicted the podium. If you get the podium right, if you get a position right, so say you go Verstappen first and he wins, you get 3 points. But if you go Verstappen first and he comes third, you get a singular point. And then we had 3 predictions throughout the weekend of stuff that could happen. We've got 1 point prediction, stuff that's maybe fairly likely to happen, a 2 point prediction that's a bit more unlikely, and then a 3 point prediction that's completely out there. If it happens, you're a genius and you can give me the lottery numbers. So, we will go through what we said would happen. And it's looking good for me on the podium side, because I said Verstappen, Leclerc, Perez. Almost perfect. Had Perez made that move at the final corner, it would have, or at the first corner, it would have been perfect. So I think that's a fairly good prediction. Bit boring, but
yeah, well. I mean, boring wins you points. So.
Boring does win you points.
Yeah, and you got 6 points out of that, which is a massive haul.
Yes,
that's
huge.
That's almost half of your points before today.
Actually, that's very good.
Really well done. Yeah,
I'm happy about that. Chinmay went for Leclerc, Verstappen, Russell. So basically, it's as boring, but I just got it the right way around. So I get 6 points from that. Chinmay gets 2. Right, now both of our 1 point predictions will need some input. So Chinmay went for Daniel Ricciardo wears American themed clothes / gear. Are we counting that James Corden tank top as American themed?
I don't think I would know. I don't think it was...
Why was James Corden there?
I don't know.
I've got nothing against...
No idea.
James Corden is another person that just doesn't help himself.
He's reportedly not a very nice person. He's a bit of an Ellen, so...
Yes. I'm justified in not liking him. But would you say that that's American style?
Come back to me. I need to find a photo.
I'll come back to you. If you can find him wearing like a backwards baseball cap or a vest, then I will give you. And then my 1 point was very simple. It was a good race. are we saying that race overall was good?
I mean, the average was like barely over 5, so...
Yeah,
I'd say no.
I was thinking no. It's a completely unbiased source. I know it's my prediction, but I was thinking no. So, have you found any Daniel Ricciardo American merch? Are we saying no for that one, or are we going to go yes?
If you look at it, it's just a crop top. I don't think there's anything American about it. It's got a pineapple on it and a
that's
butterfly.
My question. Why? I don't know. Why is James Corden? Just, it's not even a question. It's just why is James Corden? So, we're looking like no points each for our 1 point prediction. Actually, looking at the rest.
Do you count his helmet?
What was his helmet?
Ace Ventura, I think. I think helmet. I think we were going for more flowers. I know it's meant to be Ace Ventura's shirt, but
There's also a sheriff kind of badge on it.
No, I'm not counting it. Right, 0 points for both of us. 2 points, also 0 points. Chinmay went for Zhou or Schumacher gets points. It was looking good for that until Schumacher forgot how to brake. And I went for a red flag during the race. I mean, looking at it, it's not a bad idea, but it didn't happen. And then our 3 points, Gasly Q3 for Chinmay. He
qualified 7th.
Oh, okay.
Although I have to say it's a very safe 3 point.
Yeah, actually, this is the second week in a row. I'm gonna listen to this 3 points.
Thing is though, do you remember Imola? If I remember correctly, Gasly went out in Q1 in Imola. So at the time it was a 3-pointer, I think.
Maybe. We'll think about it. I will give him the 3 points and we'll keep it in
I think
mind.
you have to dispute it, like, at the time of the predictions made.
Then I went for Camila Cabello sings the national anthem. Who was it again? It was the
Louis Fonsi.
You could have given me a million guesses and I would have gone for Adele before I went for Louis Fonsi. Like, she's actually singing at the Champions League final, so wrong sporting event and therefore 0
I mean, hopefully she's not singing the American national anthem at least.
Would be fine. So that is 6 points for me and 5 for Chinmay, making the scores
19-17.
Yes, maths.
What Bethany said.
This is why you do a STEM subject, right?
I do maths.
Yep, exactly. That's why I employ the STEM students here to do my stats for me, and then I do them myself. But we are going to move on to the predictions for the Spanish Grand Prix. Bethany, you've got Chinmay's one, so I'm going to start with you and give us the top 3 for the Spanish Grand Prix.
Okay, so we worked together on all these predictions. We decided to go for, in third place, a podium for his home race, Carlos Sainz. In second place, Max Verstappen, and winning Charles Leclerc. Ooh. A pretty boring set of predictions, but...
Is that what we've got?
That's exactly what we've got.
we might have to change ours to make it...
No,
we can't, it's boring, no. Should we put Sainz second? We'll swap around Sainz and Verstappen.
Sure. I mean, it's your prediction.
Yes, I just...
So lucky we decided to change our minds, I guess. Because initially we were thinking Sainz we were thinking of putting Sainz first.
Ooh.
But we decided against it.
Alright, to make it less boring and to keep the fun alive, we're gonna go for Leclerc, Sainz, Verstappen then. We're gonna have to tell Chinmay that because he keeps us up to date. He manages everything around here. I'm just the pretty face that you can't see. But so we've done the podium each. So you've gone for Leclerc, Verstappen, Sainz. We've gone for Leclerc, Sainz, Verstappen. What are your 1, 2, and 3 point predictions?
Okay, our 1 point prediction is for Mercedes to get into Q3.
Yeah, that's a very 1 point.
Yeah. 1 point is he never said how safe it has to be. So
no. That's a decent 1 point. They didn't both get into Q3 at Imola.
True, but that was the first time since 2012.
Well, you know what they say about London buses.
True. And then the 2 pointer is for Alonso to get into the top 6 in his home race.
Yeah, that's decent 2 pointer.
And then our 3 pointer is for Haas to get double points.
That is a brave one.
That's both drivers against the points.
Yeah, no.
So Schumacher's first points and Magnussen's get points again.
I'm happy with allowing that for a 1, 2, and 3. Right, Jack, what are we gone for?
number one, we said Alonso would finish higher than Ocon in the race, which seems about 50-50 based on they seem about even, right?
Yeah, it just depends if Alonso keeps that or wall.
That sounds like a good 1 pointer.
He's had some bad luck, but home race, like you said, he'll pick it up. 2 points. Russell, I'll get another top 5. I've no idea where he keeps pulling them from, but he'll keep that going.
Are we allowing that as a 2?
I'm not sure.
I'm sorry, but no one was expecting Russell to keep the streak up after he qualified 12th.
Well, yeah, but were people expecting him to keep the streak up before he qualified 12th?
Yeah, but that's because the Mercedes look good. I'm allowing it as a 2 point, and I'm in charge.
There are only four cars that you'd put in the top 4, right? Unless there's a catastrophic failure for one.
He's got to be best of the rest. He has to be best of the rest.
Unless there's a failure for a Red Bull.
Yeah, potentially, but...
No, I think that's a fair 2 pointer.
All right.
We can argue about it next week or in 2 weeks if it matters. And then our 3 pointer, Jack.
Williams and Aston Martin will score at least 1 point each.
That's definitely 3 points.
Well, I mean, it happened at this race somehow.
Yeah, I mean, but essentially we've both picked like. You know, for your 3 pointer, you've picked one driver that has scored a few points and one driver that hasn't to get in the points, and it's the same for us basically.
But we've gone a bit more broad as well because it's any of the 4. Well, 3.
Well, yeah.
I'm sorry, Nicholas, but you need to be better. So
imagine if both Astons get points now.
Oh, like imagine if they all 4 get points.
That would be insane.
If we get double, I'm holding it. We get double points if that happens. We get 6 points out of the prediction. So those.
All right, then we get 6 points if both Haas get to the top 6.
Don't make it more complicated.
This is already a very complicated system, so we don't need to make it more complicated. That has been the Warwick F1 show for this week. We have been discussing the Miami Grand Prix, obviously looking at the Americanized race. We'll be back next week with Chinmay Show. I think he said he wants to talk about racetracks. That was all the detail he gave me. So it'll be a fun one to look at. And then in 2 weeks, for Monday the 23rd, because it's 2 days before my birthday, so I know that, we'll be back looking at the Spanish Grand Prix. But I am going to leave you here. This has been the Warwick F1 show.